Welcome, everyone. This is the March meeting for Camera Club of Richmond, and we're going to go through a couple of introductory remarks. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is from the Norfolk Botanical Garden. Their Christmas display is wonderful if you've never been. Norfolk Botanical Garden. And they have a huge garden, and it has a tremendous amount of light shows on their campus there. And it's a walk around thing, not unlike Ginter, but about 10 times as large. Got it? Okay. Next one, please. I wanted to thank Karen and Jane for handling things last week. I was struggling last month. Venkat and I were struggling in Florida, sunny Florida, where it was 75 degrees. And my wife was giving me the minute to minute about how miserable it was here. But thank you very much. And Anthony Rumley, as always, wonderful job. We had more than 60 attendees, and you can see that replay on the YouTube. I guess it's up now. Next. Next meeting, April 8th, is a hybrid like this one. And Laura will be back with the assigned subject of intentional camera movement. Tonight, she's going to teach us how to get award-winning photographs. And then next go round, we'll see if we actually hit the target. Next. A reminder from Doug, dues are now overdue. And if you've not paid your dues, please do so that you can take advantage of all the things that we do here. You can come to some of the events as a meetup person, but at $45 or whatever it is per year, it's a bargain. Next. From Joe Ring and Marianne, there are lots of events coming up. Look in the newsletter where you can see the details for those. I won't list them all here, but there's several coming up, and they're nice, and the weather's going to be better. So good opportunity to get out and get some images. Next. I assume that those people who are at home or wherever they are Zooming have already taken advantage of this, but we had an event last month that prompted us to do a new Zoom link. So put this in your sacred place, and I assume that this will be the Zoom going forward. Is that correct, Karen?
That is correct. I set it up as a recurring meeting, so the Zoom link and the passcode should stay the same each month.
From Pat, there are events coming up also. Slant Wall is in July. Public Library is going to be in August. The Chesterfield County event is being worked on, as is St. Michael's. So be aware that there are events coming up. If you need to get some prints done, it'd be a good time to do them. Next. We have more than 100 paid members with 13 special members. Non-renewals are down, which is good. And I would say to the folks who are new, there is a lot of talent in this group, and if you can't find your way through your camera, your enthusiasm, or whatever as far as imaging goes, recruit the help of some of the members, and there is a lot of talent, and we can help you. Next. These are VPPA members that were also in our group and were recently recognized by the VPPA. And those folks are award winners. Next. Tonight, Laura Twining, I guess is the way you pronounce it, Laura, retired educator, abstract photographer, and utilizes ICM, intentional camera movement, to create very beautiful images. Her website has a lot of images to give you some ideas and inspiration. If you've not looked there, it's a good resource to start. Next. And that will give the microphone to Laura.
Thank you for your very kind words. Much appreciated. Let's see, Karen Davis. All right. Just going to wait till I'm back to being a host so I can share my slides. I am the host now. Gotta love that. All right. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen?
You are good to go.
All right, great. I am honored to be here. I do want to thank Heidi and Karen and Jane for making this possible, and especially want to thank all of you for being either there at home or there at your meeting location. So thank you for that, for this opportunity. I started off with the passion for breaking the rules with photography with lens babies, and they are art lenses that use manual focus, and it has a selective blur quality. And so it was very natural for me to fall right into the love of ICM when I realized I didn't need to have 4 or 5 different of my beloved lens babies in my backpack, carrying it wherever I went and changing lenses. Now I just have one lens, and I'm the artist. I don't need lenses to help me create that. I still love my lens babies, don't get me wrong. And I also, after I had been doing ICM for a couple years, I started seeing people that were doing ICM and multiple exposure. So you all will get a taste of that as well. So intentional camera movement is simply moving your camera while your shutter is open. And depending upon your movement or how long you have your shutter open, you may have a very abstract image as a result, and you cannot tell what your original subject was, or you can tell your subject. Just depends on you. Any subject works. Whatever your favorite type of photography is, you can try ICM with that. The only word of caution, if you're a portrait photographer, be sure to take some non-ICM portraits first, and then you can do your ICM. I don't think your portraiture people always love an ICM image of themselves. Just a word of caution. I do tend to list my settings. I post most frequently on Facebook because I do a 365, or last year it was a 366, where I have one image for each day. I usually post about a week at a time, and you can look through previous albums. All mine is public, so I welcome you to do that. I also share on Instagram, and I do a couple of groups of people on Fridays. One is multiple exposure or fusion, they call it, and also ICM. But I always, on social media, if I used a regular lens, I will tell you what my settings were. Okay. All right. And as you may have noticed, with your homework, and thank you in advance for doing that, or thank you for doing that. I tried to do it in an organized manner to tell you what you need to think about and change in your camera before, what to think about during, and then after, what worked for you or what might you want to change for next time. And as experienced photographers, all of the skills and knowledge that you have, it can be directed right towards ICM. So everything that you're comfortable with, how you hold your camera, where you look through your camera, those are things that don't have to change with ICM. You want the control. So a true confession, I grew up in the world of film, but never got out of auto from my my first camera from high school, which was many decades ago, my graduation present. When I changed careers to be a teacher in my 30s, that's when I got into digital photography. So I didn't know how to use my camera at all. And Lens Babies, right when I had no clue about photography, I learned for the Lens Baby I bought that I had to shoot in either manual, aperture, or shutter. And for years, I only shot in aperture. But now that I do probably 98% ICM, I shoot in manual almost all the time. You want to have the control. So it helps if you're in manual or shutter priority. And if your camera, newer cameras, they all have autofocus. If when you are working with your ICM images, if you're fighting with your camera where it's not grabbing on to an area where it's focusing, you can turn it off. You don't have to have autofocus on. You do want to be certain and turn off if you have image stabilization or vibration reduction, and make sure that you don't have that also in your lens. So if that's in your camera or your lens or both, make sure that's turned off, because otherwise you're going to be fighting with your camera the whole time. You do not need to have noise reduction on. Make sure that's off as well. Your lens, what is your favorite lens? My go-to lens now is a Nikkor 28-400, and it's on my camera almost all the time. And I have a filter, a variable neutral density filter that stays on it. It makes it easy. I don't have to think of anything or grab anything extra when I'm heading out the door. How long? It's whatever you like using. If you have your favorite, 14 millimeter, you can do ICM with a wide angle. You could do it with a macro. Whatever lens you like using, start with that. It's really up to you. Chimping. When I shared already that I started digital photography a little later in life. And I thought that looking at everything after you took a picture and looking at the back, I thought that was, like cheating. It's not cheating. I will tell you that is the best tool to help you learn about your ICM images. If you just get a habit of looking, I use it when I'm shooting multiple exposures. I'm shooting 2 images at a time to make the third, and I look in between because I want that to help me compose my next shot. And I also want to know if I didn't like it, I'm right there. I can redo it. So be sure to chimp. If that is a skill you have long ago given it up, pick it up. You will be happy. It will help you be less frustrated with ICM. Aperture settings. I have my go-to lens. It goes to f/45. I don't intentionally put it there, but when I'm shooting, I'm not watching my aperture as much. I'm watching my ISO, my shutter speed, and my aperture last. I have the I can't think of what the word is, but in my camera, it's not the histogram. I have the, meter that shows me if I'm really over or under, and I try to keep it right in the middle. So that's why I would change my aperture. I will show you what happens. This was at f/45. It's taken of a local group of sailors, and they have a remote a mini sailboat regatta, and they practice every Thursday. Let's see, can I go in? All right, so I was happily taking pictures. Do you see all these spots? And I go to my camera store about every other week to get my sensor cleaned. So you can imagine that it takes a lot of time to go through and tediously erase every single dot. So just be mindful of whatever the higher number is on your lens, that if you haven't cleaned your sensor recently, you may spend a lot of time erasing spots. So just a little warning. As far as how long of an exposure do you want to start with? Really, you just need a starting point. So whether, and if you read through, you may have noticed, well, she said one place to use 1/5 of a second and experiment. And then later in her slideshow, she used 0.5 of a second. Absolutely, I did. All you need to do is pick a point and start there. If you start off with 1/5 of a second, you're not going to have very much time to move. So you may want to just start off at 1/2 a second. And the main thing is right here. Trial and error. So once you're chimping, you will be able to see, okay, that worked well, or no, that didn't work. I'm not going to do that again. So just, be kind to yourself. It takes time. Filter or not. I shared that I have my filter on my lenses. These are not the real expensive, wonderful filters that I use if I'm going out and doing night photography. This basically serves as my lens cap as well, because I can't put another cap over the neutral density filter that I have on. Mine are cheaper. I bought them from Amazon. I just want to have a variable neutral density filter on my lens. And one warning, if you choose to not spend a lot of money on your filters, as you're using them, when you get to the max setting right after maximum, before it goes to no change at all with the coloring, the filter, you may end up with like an X, a dark X in your image. So just be mindful, because I will tell you from experience, I didn't notice it. I guess I didn't chimp well enough to see it. So I didn't see it until I loaded it on my computer, and then it's like, oh gosh. So just a word of caution with that. Let's see. ISO, if you don't know what your camera recommends for your ISO, it doesn't matter. Start at 100. You just need a place to start. Okay. Best recipe, you absolutely need contrast and light, because with your movement, you want to make sure that there's something that's visible that changes as you move your lens. Colors, and this again goes right back to your knowledge for being a photographer. You know that if it's a cloudy, overcast day, colors tend to pop more. If you're shooting flowers, it's wonderful. It's great for ICM. You just have to be careful not to get too much of your sky, or your image will get more blown out. Textures are great in ICM. Shapes, as I mentioned before, you can determine whether it's a truly abstract image or whether your subject is able to be identified. So best conditions, again, you want to make sure you have the contrast. Early morning, anytime, if you are an outdoor photographer, landscape, what have you, whatever golden hour is, that's a great time to use ICM. To try or not to tripod, that choice is yours. If you prefer using a tripod, use a tripod. I've seen people on YouTube that use a tripod. I will admit to being a little lazy, and more than more times than I can count on one hand. I will bring my tripod with me when I'm going to a meetup. You know, we just went to a cemetery for my local photo group. And, you know, I would bring my tripod and then not set it up. So I do not, however, use my tripod with ICM. I just hand hold it because I have my mirrorless and my lens. I don't want to have a bunch of other stuff to carry. You do need lots of space on your memory card or multiple cards if you don't have a large card, a large space on your card. With multiple exposure, for easy math, if I am going to shoot a single multiple exposure using 2 ICM images, that means for every multiple exposure, I'm going to have 2 other images because I choose to save that. So that means I end up with 300 images on my card, even though I only wanted 100 of the multiple exposure. So it's easy to fill up fast. And extra batteries. I know you guys had quite the cold snap, but I know today you had a great weather. But if it's really cold, bring extra batteries. And even if it's not, if you're doing ICM, you can shoot off hundreds and hundreds before, much more so than you would when you're normally shooting. So bring an extra battery. Be sure to shoot in RAW. If you're newer to photography and you're still shooting in JPEG, just change to RAW now. You don't have to do anything differently with your images. You will just have that in your bank so that someday when your knowledge catches up with your skill, when your skill and knowledge catch up, you will still be able to edit older images. I wish that I would have changed when I had friends that came out from Florida to visit in California, and they were shocked I wasn't shooting in RAW. I wish I would have started then, but I do now. What to keep in mind during your shoot. Do you want to move, then click, or click, then move? I'm in the move, then click, because that's what feels natural to me. That's what I've been doing. It's all a preference, whichever you prefer. I have tried move and click. I think it's okay. It just doesn't feel as natural to me. Probably if I spent, you know, like a week only doing that, then it would feel better. I just like my images the way that they are with click then move. So here's your recipe to start. Start off with 0.5 of a second and then take a shot. If you don't get the movement you want, then increase your exposure time, your shutter speed to longer. And then you just need to make adjustments with your ISO or your aperture accordingly. And the benefit, you chimp, you look at the back of your shutters, your back of your screen, so you can see what results you're getting. Where do you look? Well, where do you look at your subject now? I look in the viewfinder, and I have a little rubber cup that's on my viewfinder, and it keeps all the light out. I started doing that when I was doing macro flower photography. So I only look in my viewfinder. Sometimes if it's on a tripod, I'm gonna probably look at the screen, but I usually use my viewfinder because that's what I'm comfortable with, and that's what I normally do. Do different movements make different results? Absolutely. If you want to, you could use a voice memo on your cell phone. If you have your cell phone with you, most of us do, you know, what type of movement you're using. When you're starting off, you may not be able to identify your movement as much, but it's up to you. So many times I will go out, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to make a note of this. I'm just going to go right home, and darn it, I get home and I can't remember what setting it was that I wanted to make sure I kept in mind. So just from personal experience. Specific types of movement. Horizontal, you're just going to go left to right or right to left. And I know that we have, let's see if I can figure this out. Hide thumbnail video. All right. I don't know if you guys can see me or not. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. So I don't need, how about that? No? All right. Well, as long as you guys you can see me now. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So specific, I didn't want to be showing you types of movement if you couldn't see my screen. Well, I know you can see the screen, but I didn't know if you could see me. Horizontal, go from left to right or the opposite, vertical, up to down, or from the bottom to the top. I'm sorry, vertical, up and down, and then diagonal. Either way you can go. Twist starting from a horizontal, going to vertical, or vice versa, vertical to horizontal. Circle and spin. Remember that we needed light for our images. If you make a motion like this, it's going to pick up the lightest part of your image, so your motion will be really discernible. So a circle would be making a circle, or it might be an oval, it might be a square, whatever shape it is that you choose to make. Or a spin is where I'm going to try and remember the days that we had math and you had that compass point. You would stick that in the paper and then, turn it around. It's the same kind of idea. You would get your subject, either it doesn't have to be in the middle, it could be wherever you want it in your image, but then you're going to want to pivot your camera around. And be sure to have your camera tethered to you if you're doing a spinning motion, because you don't want to drop your camera. Okay. I don't know why that's there. Let me move Marianne. Okay. All right. And then other types, zoom. If you have a telephoto lens, you can do that zoom motion, and I have images to show you in a minute. There can be a difference going from, this is my wide angle, if I'm going from wide angle to telephoto, or going from telephoto ends to wide angle. Just keep in mind, if you started, I always start off now at my wide angle, so that way when I look through my images and I have two zooms, I know one was wide angle to telephoto and one was telephoto to wide angle. You can't always tell a difference, but sometimes you can. Chunking or juttering, it's more like going up or down steps. Shaking, just a little bit of a shake, or it could be more of a shake. I will warn you, if you get too much shaking, it will be really abstract, and that can be great. Just keep in mind that will be the result if your movement is too vast. Turning your camera again from the horizontal to vertical, you can take part of your image, vertical, and then change to horizontal, then change to vertical. One of my favorites with the multiple exposure is upside down. Basically, you're making your own reflection. So I tend to start here. I'm looking through my viewfinder and I'm going to go from left to right. And then I'm going to turn my camera around and I still stick it back in to the viewfinder. So I am looking through the viewfinder, whether it's right side up or upside down. I will say that's a great way to meet people, because people think you're crazy. Like, what are you taking a picture of? And I just say, oh, you know what? I do art. It's artsy, so it's upside down. And then they're like, okay. The advantage of getting older is I'm not embarrassed when I get caught doing silly things like that. I love doing it. So yeah, please ask me what I'm doing. Another type of movement, if you want to create waves in your image, it's physics. I don't know anything more than that. But if you want waves in your image, you need to make mountains or bumps. If you want to have a mountain movement in your image, but you already figured it out, you need to make waves. So just give that a try as well. Okay. And here are some examples. When I'm doing a sunrise or sunset, I want to make sure my horizon is exactly level. Where I go in the river, it's not always even. So this is exactly what I am seeing. Sometimes people will be like, well, it's not level, but you should see where I was standing. It was level. So it depends, your preference. I absolutely could make all of these look level, but it's not the way it is. So I keep it. I'm horizontal. I have a, what do you call, a guide in my lens that in my camera that I see through my viewfinder, so I can tell that my image is level as I'm shooting. And vertical, just the same, up and down, a wide variety of results. Diagonal. And here's where you can see this difference between circle and spin. And you can see that was the motion I made. It's a single image. Over here, it might be a little more of a circle. And then this spin where I had my center point here and there. So it just, you've got a lot of options for what you can do. Shake, if you love Impressionism paintings or the Impressionist period, shaking just a little bit will give you that wonderful result. So be sure to give that a try. Upside down, again, one of my favorites. These are both multiple exposures taken in light mode at the river. So what you see here, this is the sky. This is the sky. You have the water, and then the beach sand is in between. And the same with this one. It wasn't a very bright day, so it's darker. So sky, the water's in the middle, and then just the different colors with the sand, doing a multiple exposure. And this is upside down again using dark mode. And this image was probably the most magnificent sunset I've seen in years. It is not edited very much at all because the colors were just phenomenal when I uploaded it. And also at the time, we knew it was magical when we were shooting. But with the dark mode, you get deep dark colors, the blues, the greens. It just is amazing to see what happens when you use more than one image together. Okay, again, more examples on the wave motion. So if you want waves, you're going to make mountains. If you want mountains in your image, you're going to make waves. Zooming. With a zoom, I already talked about ways that you can zoom with your lens. If you do have a prime lens on your camera, you can zoom with your whole camera and lens by just, I'm going to be at my, looking through the viewfinder. And if I want to zoom with one of my lens babies that are prime lenses, I'm just going to push right out. And depending upon how fast I make my motion, it'll give me similar to a zoom. And keep in mind, like this of the sky, okay, my subject isn't all the way through the frame. There are different parts where the cloud's left and it's just the sky in the back. So you don't really get that predominant zoom motion. Same there. It's not all the way through. But look at this. You can see this zoom motion all the way through my picture because the whole frame was filled with my subject. Okay. Oh, another question for you. How much do you move? I would recommend starting off with just a little bit of movement and then a little more or then a lot more. And also the speed of your movement. If I make a really quick, drastic motion, it's going to be really abstract because you can't tell what your subject is if you move too quickly. And if that's the result you want, that's great. But I would recommend start off a little, add a little more, and then a lot. So you can start looking at what you like to shoot and tell the difference. And as you're starting, be sure to work your subject. Take time. This is not something I would put on my wall, but it sure helped me get practice standing in one place. And this was time when I was jotting down what type of motion I used. Although you can also see the motion. Do you see where the lightest point is like that? My leaves are moving like that. This image, it was horizontal. This diagonal. And then this, you've got a little like a C or an L for Laura type thing. So just take some time and stick with one subject and really, get a vase of flowers. If it's too cold, put it on the dining room table. So, I have learned this and I am passing it on to you. Because I know you're going to chimp, you're going to take your image, you're going to look at it right away as soon. I don't even have to move my eye from my camera. I know I can see exactly what I shot right away without doing that. And somebody long ago told me, you should practice with your camera in a dark closet. This was getting ready to do night photography. I thought they were crazy, but can I tell you how much easier it is if you know where your settings are and you're not dependent to look at them? So when you look through your screen, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Take more pictures right then and there. If you're able to stay with your subject, spend a little more time with it. This was an assignment I took for a class that I was taking, and it was on multiple exposures, dark mode, and it's a local botanical garden. It's a little teeny tiny place, like a half mile from my house. This here is a historic protected heritage oak, not historic. And, it's probably 100 to 120 feet up in the sky, which is good. We want it upright. And once a year, the tulips at the base of this majestic oak bloom. We're almost at that time of year. So my first image was of the trunk and the tree. And then the second was of the tulips. I looked in my viewfinder, went, oh, that's cool. Perfect. It'll work for my assignment. Took another shot, couple shots, went home, turned my assignment in. I had no idea how difficult it would be to replicate that. Oh, sorry. Gonna put you guys back down here just a little bit. All right. And also this image. Oh, I happen to be level with the river. Oftentimes I will be up on a walking bridge or on the trailway that's up higher, so I'm shooting down. But I just happened to be there, and an egret, great egret, took off right there. And, it wasn't exactly panning because I was moving. I love this image. I have not been able to duplicate that all either. So take more images when you see something you love. All right, so that was ICM. Now we'll move on to ICM and multiple exposures. And why do I love it? Because to me, it's even more artistic than ICMs might be. I just like looking at things and visioning exactly what I'm going to have with two images together. And poppies, it's not quite yet poppy season, probably at this rate, late April, May. But I love it. It's just so much fun to take multiple exposures. Things I have learned with multiple exposure, if I am in my camera menu and I want to do a multiple exposure, if I have bracketing on, I cannot turn on multiple exposure. It's not even a selection, it's grayed out. I also learned something, not this past weekend, the weekend before. I was out shooting and I was in average mode, and I was taking images with creating a multiple exposure with 5 images together. So I had my camera on continuous shooting, and I did that for quite a while in the morning. And then I came back to where I was almost at the car, right back at the river. And I, changed my continuous mode. With this camera, I have a choice for my continuous mode of 5, 20, 30, 60, 120. I normally shoot it in high, which is the 20. I put it into 30, not even thinking about it. I just slid it too far on the dial in the back. And I know what it sounds like when I'm in average mode and I have it set for 5 clicks because my noise is on. So I'm going to hear it and feel it shoot. And then I kept waiting to get the little hourglass when my 5 images would be up. And I wasn't getting that. So I did, a couple more, turn around. And then I looked at my camera. I'm like, well, multiple exposures off. I didn't turn that off. No, my camera did because I had it set on 30. So I now know that my camera will have a mind of its own. And if it makes sense though, because if I'm telling my camera to shoot 30 frames continuously, it's not going to have time to stop after every 5 and make my multiple exposure image. So just passing on a little lesson learned. Things to change in your menu. We already talked about these. And I made a list of a few more to keep in mind. And you can change these for ICM as well as multiple exposure. One word of caution, nowadays cameras have such amazing capacity. This Nikon can go up to 256,000 ISO. I don't want my camera to have that much control. I have my ISO sensitivity capped at 10,000. I really don't like it to go over 5,000. I don't want there to be too much noise in my image. And that's just what I've found for my style of photography and what I prefer. Options for multiple exposure. When I'm looking in my shooting menu, that's the menu I have to get, back my camera, turn menu on. And then I have the choices on the side. For Nikon, it's in my photo shooting menu. I have more choices in my camera's main menu than if I have it in my shortcut menu. So let me back up a little bit. Multiple exposure, I usually do 2, and I would recommend that's where we start. And with that, one might be ICM, the other might be non-ICM, or they both can be ICM. You can combine, I can shoot up to 10 images to create one image. So it's going to be whatever your preference is, how many you like. But when you're start off with 2, then you can visualize your results a bit better, in my experience. And then if, let's see, all right, then we'll do that. What if your camera doesn't have multiple exposure? Because not all cameras do. I know some of Sony does not. So a couple workarounds. You can shoot, and anybody can do this. You don't have to have a Sony. You could use a longer shutter speed. So instead of starting off with 0.5, I'd start off with 1 second. And what you're going to want, if you would like to do like 2 subjects, you want to cover your lens briefly between subjects unless they are right next to each other. For example, if I'm taking a picture of tulips and I want to take a picture then of a camellia, I'm going to have to go from where my vase is outside to where my camellias are. That means all this area, this space here is going to be captured because I'm moving the camera. But if you want to get more specific of the tulips and then the camellia, you're going to have to cover it if you do not have multiple exposure. You can use a black glove on, you can use black fabric, depending upon if you have a cloth to wipe your lens. If you have a black one, that'll work great. Black paper, just something that the light doesn't continue to get into your sensor. That's all you're doing, you're blocking it. Another option you have is using an app like Snapseed or Photoshop to combine your images. And I also added phone information. So, and I did it alphabetically. Although I am an Apple person, I put Android first. If you have a Samsung phone 2020 or earlier or later, if you have a Series S or Z, you already have an app with your phone. It may already be on your screen. You might have to search for it in your menu. It's called Expert Raw. And with that, you can change it to give you multiple exposures. So that's another way to use your cell phone. Another app is FV5, and that is not exclusive to Samsung. It's any Android. You can find it in your Google store. And with this one, if you find your images a little choppy because it combines multiple images into one, which is what you want it to do, you can use whatever editing program you're using. You can just move your clarity slider. So that will help you. And then it shows here the different types or modes you have with these two different apps. Onto Apple's slow shutter app. Just so you know, in the version I sent you, I had a typo. This word right here was send, not save. So with the slow shutter app and from experience, I can tell you that I can make a real muddy mess if I move around too much. There are 3 different capture modes right here for you. And you've got information to how to get it to your camera roll. And the second Apple app I have is Average Camera Pro. And just to keep in mind, it has a slow shutter on the bottom right-hand side. You just need to toggle that if you want more slow shutter. Otherwise, you can get, double images, regular multiple exposure. Or double exposure, depending upon what you want to call it. It does have the capacity to go from 1 image up to 128. So if you want to shoot that many, and it doubles, so it's not that many. It's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 to 128, but it's still going to take 128 images. I have never done anything like that, but I have seen an image that somebody did of a football stadium. It was phenomenal, just amazing. And I'm sure they did it on a tripod, because you would want to make sure if you're trying to piece something that together with that many images. Okay, so now looking at the difference with my, this is, I shared the photo shooting menu before, but these are the choices that I have with that. I have many more choices. With this, I have save individual pictures, which I do in RAW. Overlay shooting, yes, I select that because what that means, when I'm shooting 2 images, combining them into one, that means that after I take my first picture, I am going to be able to see that image in my viewfinder, just a little ghostly. It helps me to go ahead and compose for the second part that I have for my multiple exposure. Overlay shooting, that's what I was talking about. This is something that I didn't notice until last year after the tulip time came. Now I have a choice in my main menu, select first exposure. That means I can select an image that's in my camera on my memory card. So that means I would have a better chance to get to recreate my tulip tree with the oak and the tulips at the bottom. If I had, the oak tree image already. You do need to make sure, if your camera has more than one memory card, you want to make sure that whatever memory card you're shooting on, that the image is on there, because You can't, at least with my Nikon, I can't go between memory cards. I can't say, save all my images to my primary card and then pull something off of my secondary card that's my backup to be on the first. Okay, so just use one memory card. And when I do this, I'm just going to upload it. I'm going to erase my memory card. Then I'm going to put a couple of the tulip tree ones on my memory card, and then I can shoot whatever I want and come back to that because it'll be on my card. So I'm excited to try that this year. Okay. And then the difference with the quick menu. For Nikon, it's an I menu. These are the only choices I have. I can't select that image on my memory card here. So you just want to know that your shortcut menu may not give you as many options as your main menu. Okay. What will help you is being able to predict. If you can look at a scene and think, okay, I want this part of the river and this part of the hillside, I'm going to put them together. As you start working more with multiple exposures and depending upon what mode you're using, you're going to be able to think, okay, well, I know that if I'm in light mode and this dark area is here, that's going to be covered. So that's just a piece for you to start thinking about what your camera is going to be doing. And do different blending modes make a difference? Yes. If you've ever been in Photoshop and working with layers, I think more than 25 layer choices you have, blending modes, it's just like that. And you know that if you scroll through all of them, trying to see what it'll do to your image, it changes just about with every single different mode. Same idea with multiple exposures. And there are predominantly 4 different modes: additive, average, light. With Canon, it's bright or dark mode. Okay. Additive, for those of you that have experience doing double exposures with film, you knew that as you kept adding more images, it got lighter and lighter. It's the same concept with digital. And it works well as to use that mode if your subject is moving in front of a dark background. I will confess this is the one I use the least because I'm usually outside in daylight and I don't use additive for this, but I did take pictures for you guys to make sure that you can see the difference. Average is great if you're taking, a multiple exposure with 2 and you have one really light image and one really dark image. The multiple exposure is going to take 50% of the weight from one and the other and combine them. And here you have examples. This is the same location. You can see additive. And this is average, same exact spot. I tried to do the same motion. So you can see in average, it is darker. And then this location, and this is a different slide than you have. I realized as I kept going through the slideshow that I did not have the settings on your page. So I went out and took new images with settings. And I'll make sure you guys get a copy of this too. And this is the same. You can see with the additive, it's mostly blue here. And it's the same place. Look at this shore that didn't come through because it's darker. So average, it kept the dark areas of my image, and then I just couldn't resist one of our oaks. I'm excited the leaves are starting to come out. And this is shooting in continuous mode with average. I shared earlier before the meeting started that I always bring my camera with me, and you guys are more than welcome to get up and walk around the room and shoot. Sorry, I didn't share that before. But this is my doctor's building on the 3rd floor, and it was a great day. It was sunny. It was more than a year ago, and I just played with it out the window, but I love the results that I got. And this is in average mode, so you have to remember, really dark and light, it's going to be blending together. And then this I took 2 weekends ago when I figured out that if I put continuous mode up to 30. It doesn't keep doing multiple exposures. That's what I was doing. I just left the walking bridge that goes to a nearby town. And so I knew that I had my 5 images together. So that's why. And this is the same doctor's office, a different day. You can bet anytime I go to that location, even if I don't need to be in that building, I go to that building, I go to the 3rd floor and I shoot out that window. So far, they've not asked me to leave. I'm very polite. I don't get any other people in the waiting room in my picture. But you also, if you're shooting in continuous mode, it's really a quick succession. So I'm not truly doing a specific ICM motion for each image. You can see here that my edges are kind of straight. So I wasn't making a real drastic ICM motion because it's fast. So just to let you know that. Light and dark mode, my go-to mode is light mode. That's what I shoot the most in. And the advantage I find shooting outside with light is that our cameras are so smart, it matches pixel by pixel. So if there is a piece of the image, this pixel is light, and the second image comes through as dark, your camera is going to make the light one cover the dark. So it's similar to Photoshop blend mode of lighten. And dark mode is the exact opposite of light mode. The dark pixels will override the light ones. Dark mode is great if you have a light subject in front of dark subject in front of a light area. So it's the opposite of additive in that manner. And here are some examples. I also don't use a hood. I didn't like them. I thought they were cumbersome. And if I have a chance of getting a sun flare in my picture, I want the sun flare. And that goes back to my lens baby days. It's still true for me for ICM. So these both images are light mode. Okay. And you can see here, I call it my elephant tree. It wasn't really an elephant tree, and I didn't notice it when I chimped out in the field. My first image on this, we had just gotten to a new location, and I shot the gravel at my feet and then shot the trees in front of me. Here's just about the same subject. I zoomed in more on it, and that's dark mode. So you can see the vast difference. And I still did I shot the gravel at my feet and then the trees. So you can see the light with that is almost non-existent. All righty, here are my tulip tree attempts. I will be trying again, and they look nothing like the one I shared with you earlier. So, I like them. I kind of prefer this one to that one, but I'm going to try this year to use part of that image in my memory card. So that's difference between light and dark mode. And then with this, you need to look, you can see all the way through to the sky right above the hills there. And then in this image, you can see it's darker and it gives you all those different greens that come in from the dark mode. I just, it's exciting to see what you create. All right, benefits of various blending modes. Light mode, your camera sees different things than what our eyes see. It creates the lavender and pinks, and I finally figured out that's simply the combination of the sand and the water, because it's all not the same color when you're looking at it. The water is different depending upon shadows, where the light is. So that light mode will give you pinks and lavenders. Dark mode gives you the deep, dark greens and blues, and you also can get really bright, almost like a fluorescent yellows. Additive mode, these two images are straight out of camera. I wanted you to be able to see what happens. You can see how dark this whole entire area is through here, as well as this image. It's really dark on top, and it's still darker there. But yet when you look at the multiple exposure, this looks more like a shadow. It doesn't look as dark. And up here, it's picked up a lot of the light. So just to show you what difference additive would make, these images are, this first one is not in focus, but I wanted you to see what I was shooting. This is not additive mode. It's just an example of how different movements can really make a different result. I used that same base image, and then my next movement was just horizontal. So that made it, to me, it almost looks like it's fleeting, or you took a paintbrush and, pulled through your image. Same location, and the settings are each 1/6 of a second. So I didn't change my length of time. The only thing that changed was my motion. So you can see one was vertical and one was at a diagonal. And this one was vertical and one was more horizontal. So you really get very different results with different movements. So again, work your subjects. These were all taken with two images, either horizontal and vertical or a crisscross. So just you can see that with just one or two different movements, you can create a whole different world. What to think of during, use your favorite lens. Start with light or bright. And then start with horizontal. If you've done panning, you've already mastered horizontal ICM. And I would start again with the 1/2 second, your low ISO, and just adjust from there. I don't believe I shared this, but don't delete when you're in the field. I know some people will be like, oh, I don't like this, I hate it. You know what? You might find it to be an educational reason. When you upload it to your computer and you look at it, it might be like, oh, that's not so bad. Or, oh, I can see I did this type of movement and I don't care for that. So don't delete in the field. Give yourself a break. You're learning a new skill. All right. Can you change orientation between pictures? Yes. For me, if I start horizontal, then my second one is, if I start landscape, my second one is portrait. My final image when I review it in the viewfinder is going to be landscape. You also know that you can change that in your post-processing. And when you're done, I shared earlier that I have my camera set to shoot in RAW. One disadvantage of Nikon, my multiple exposures are not RAW, they're JPEG. So depending upon what your camera system is, it might be that your multiple exposure is in JPEG. So just to let you know. Post-processing, this is just the way that I keep my files together. You, I'm sure, already have a way of filing and keeping your images. This is just something that works for me. I mentioned before about the clarity slider. This image I took, and this is straight out of camera. And you can see I've got some pretty discernible lines. I did a horizontal and a vertical. This, if I take, and this was in Lightroom, I took the clarity slider to -100. You can see that those lines are not as visible. Whereas in this image, that's +100. So you can see that with your clarity slider, you can take one image and make multiple versions of it. Okay. For my learnings, what I shared today, this is what works for me. You may be on YouTube or talking to other people, meeting people, or looking on Facebook and finding out that, well, I don't know, that Laura person told me this is what she does. That's what works for me. There are probably as many different parts of ICM and different ways that you can do ICM, as people that are at that meeting, that are at it's a church building I think you are in. So it varies from person to person. It's what works for me. And just experiment. Once you start out, like I said, I do click then move, but absolutely I tried move then click. I watched a show not too long ago, Charlotte Bellamy, she's over in Europe, and she was talking about doing move then click with, winter trees. Of course, I went out and tried it again. It depends what is most comfortable to you. The number one thing, be sure to have fun. If I lived anywhere near you all, I would be there with Heidi and everybody that's going to show up for your meetup on the 22nd. But again, please contact me. I want you to be successful, and I am right here, so you can text me, and please use this contact information to get a hold of me. I will say, I'm Laura Lee Twining on Facebook, Dr. Marm Images on Instagram. My cell phone, the best way to get a hold of me is to text, "Hey Laura, I'm from RCC." And if you're finding that you're getting stuck and you're just not seeing what you're doing, what you need to change, let me help, because number one, I'm 3 hours later than you are, so you could be doing this at midnight and I'm still awake at 9 p.m. So that's one bonus, but I really want to make this positive for you. And I'm a retired elementary school principal, so of course I want you guys to succeed. So we have that there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share. Do we have time for just like actually, no. All right. So there we go.
That was phenomenal.
Okay.
You're definitely a teacher. You taught that so well and so clearly.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, as I said.
Now, you might have a few questions popping up.
Okay.
So
And if
questions
anybody
in the
wants
room.
to, go ahead. If anybody wants to speak, go ahead and ask questions. I think Paul's getting his microphone together.
Okay.
And then anyone who's on hybrid right now, turn your microphone on.
Yeah, I'll start. Somewhere in there you mentioned using matrix mode. For us non-Nikon shooters, is matrix mode like a multi sensor spot setting, or is it
Exactly.
the average of the entire sensor?
Yes.
Which one?
It's the multi, so that it's looking at your bigger picture. So not just a single spot of focus. You get an A+ for reading.
Can you go back to your
From church. Jay.
Can you go back to your image that of the sunset where the sky was both the top and the bottom, and explain a little bit again about how you did that? I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it, but thank you.
Yes, I can do that. Give me just a minute. Am I sharing still, or are you sharing? Can you see my screen?
You can
Yes.
see your PowerPoint.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. View. PowerPoint. Let's see.
And while we're waiting, I don't know who else has a birthday today, but I know Joe Ring does. So wish
Ooh,
Joe
happy birthday, Joe. All right, sorry guys, it's gonna be this way. I know it would have been easier. I tried to go in the view mode. So just give me a minute. So yes, I can get back to there, but now I realize I've already gone. I know that there's a different way to do it. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna go run back through. So be thinking of any other questions you guys have while I run back through here.
I'm not familiar with dark and light mode. Are they menu settings or
Yes. What camera are you shooting with,
a
sir?
Fujifilm?
With Fuji, Yeah, depending upon when you look in your multiple exposure menu, it may not be called light mode, it might be
You went
bright
past.
mode.
Okay,
So that, do you use Photoshop at all?
well, I've been using Capture One.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with Capture One.
Yeah, not
But-
many people seem to be using it, so.
Okay, all right, sorry, now I got this. Let me finish answering your question. Light mode and additive mode and average mode and dark mode, those are all different ways that and we'll just use two images because it's easier. But it's the way that one image intermingles with the other.
Okay.
So it changes what part of the image
The
is more
camera
dominant.
choice, is it not?
Yes, it's something you
Part
choose
of
in
the
your
camera.
camera.
So it keeps from having the cumulative image overexposed or,
Not necessarily. It depends what your settings are. So, it just, let me take your idea and go back to this. I think this was the picture that someone was asking about, wanting to know how it was
That's
a
not the one.
sunset.
That's
Is
not
that
the one.
right?
No,
Which one?
it's farther back.
Oh, okay.
That's
I'm
pretty
sorry.
fun.
So you wanted the one that was where the horizon was straight?
River one. And when you said the most
Okay.
spectacular sunrise you've ever seen.
Spectacular sunrise picture.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. And I'm sure anybody that really knows how to do this is cringing watching me flip through all these slides for the third time in a row. You're going to have them memorized now. All right. Not this one, correct?
No, the best one you've ever seen, the best sunset there.
Oh, this one. Yes. Okay. And your question, now that we finally got there.
So he's getting the mic.
Question, I think, was you'd mentioned about doing one image with the camera in its normal sort of way, then the other one you're turning it upside down. That's how you're getting the basically the sky, both the top and the bottom. Can you talk about that, please?
I'd be happy to. Usually, with doing the upside down, and again, I'm going to make sure I'm tethered because I don't want to be why you drop your very wonderful, fabulous camera. So either make sure it's tethered to your wrist, or around your neck. And with this, I would be taking one image, just moving across this way. And then I literally turn it all the way around. And I will say that my straps get in the way here, but I move them and you have to make sure that you can still access your shutter button, or I can just look through my viewfinder and tap the back of my screen as well. I can get a picture that way, but it's physically moving your camera all the way upside down. You could also do it from a portrait setting and turn it all the way around. Portrait is easier to maneuver, as you might have seen, versus doing the landscape all the way around. And you will get some odd looks.
Are both photographs leveled when you do that?
I try to keep them level, but obviously we know the ocean is level, and you can see that my water's not really level here or there, but I liked the colors, so I didn't want to make one of them be 100% level in the horizon. I took, an artistic license with that, and the same here. My river's not level, but I try to so that I have more of my image to play with.
When you turn the camera, you don't have your finger on the shutter, so it's not a twist. It's two separate photographs, right?
Yes, it is two separate photographs. So I do have my finger, I take one shot, and then I turn it upside down, and then I get to the shutter again and click. So. And you could do that in one motion without hitting the shutter again. You could do the same thing. It just is less predictable than if you do it as two separate images. All right. Any other questions?
Laura, when you are taking the upside down image, are you also moving horizontally?
Yes.
Okay.
You could do it vertically as well. I think, it's just one of the pieces that you can move, you can create your own maneuver. I can make the Laura twist or what have you. You can move however you want. You may do part of a horizontal and flip it up at the end. It's the art license, so you can do whatever you like.
Laura, would this work with your cell phone as well?
Yes, it's much easier with the cell, I will admit. One thing though, let me not forget that. At my field trip earlier or last week, I saw, and I drank the apple Kool-Aid. But a friend of mine had a little wrist strap that clipped right onto her cover. Then that way, she doesn't have to worry about dropping her iPhone, which I've done many times. So yes, that absolutely upside down one, turn it upside down two. So yes, and I wanted to share this. You know how helpful certain shopping companies are that deliver to your doorstep. I was on that store's website, I needed to get another filter. And they picked this particular item to show me. I thought it was brilliant. It clips onto my cell phone. I now have a variable neutral density filter on my cell phone. And I know there are different companies that make different lenses that you can put on, but I'm just excited. And this will work with, an Android, depending upon which one you have, how close your lenses are. But I am so excited to try this. So I had it out for a show and tell item. I just got it yesterday. So I thought, I'll have to share it with the group. But I think, and it's easy, plus it has a cap that goes on the filter. Who knew? All right. Let's see.
I have a question.
Yes.
Laura, I'm wondering if you enter any of your ICM images into competitions, and if so, how well do they do with the judges when they're looking at them compared to regular landscapes or, just other types of images?
I entered the California State Fair in 2023 was the first year I did it. And for that, I contacted the person directly because when I read through all of the descriptions of the categories, there wasn't anything that said, ICM. What they told me that I had to put it in the photo manipulation category. So that means that even though all my images are created in camera, I'm competing with people that have phenomenal design experience on their computers, which I don't have. So I did get an image selected in the first year. they picked a multiple exposure. It was not an ICM, but it was a multiple exposure. And then last year I entered the same amount in the regular color category that were not ICM photo manipulation. They're just regular shots. And then I entered ICM and ICM multiple exposure and the photo manipulation, and I got one accepted last year. And it was surprisingly from the photo manipulation. So I haven't entered other contests, so I really can't address. It's the same person at the state fair. But I would contact them directly and say, you know, where would you like me to enter my images? And also looking at the background of your judges too. Nobody had a background in intentional camera movement at all. They had the design background, which is amazing. I know phenomenal photographers, but I look forward to having you tell me what you find when you start entering your ICM images in competitions.
Okay, I'll let you know. If I
Excellent.
try it. Thank you.
A great question.
My pleasure.
When you were talking about the upside down image, one way of doing it, and it's slightly easier, is if you're using a long lens with a lens collar, put the camera on a tripod, put it on multiple exposure, shoot it in normal, normal view, move it to the left or right, whatever your choice, and rotate the lens collar, and then take your second exposure and move from left to right.
Brilliant. See,
and that does
I'm
not
lazy.
require you contorting your hands, your strap, or anything like that.
Yes. Brilliant. But you know, my tripod's probably back in the car in the trunk. But I will have to try that. All right.
All right, Laura, the way we kind of say goodnight here is somebody stops recording, everybody says thank you. There should be some thank yous in the chat, and we appreciate you so much. This was absolutely wonderful.
Well, thank you.
I don't know if you could see the digital director, but you're getting a round of applause in the audience over there.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks, almost a month. Exactly. All right. And please don't hesitate, guys. I look forward to hearing from you. Happy birthday, Joe. I'm looking back in the chat. All right. Hope it was a great evening for you all as well.
Thank you.